Saturday, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Let Me Interrupt, a woman's perspective in today's workplace. Like traditional weekend fashion, we are bringing you some really great content this weekend, and we have a really great guest on. I'm going to toss it over to Cindy for a formal introduction.
Thanks, Melissa. So today we're joined by Jelisa Glanton. She is a licensed master social worker and certified trauma professional in the state of Maryland. Jelisa provided an individual and group therapy to adults utilizing an integrative holistic approach. She graduated from Trinity Washington University in DC with a major in psychology and from Catholic University of America with a master's in clinical social work. She has experience working with individuals and families, providing case management services to low-income and marginalized population, as well as clinical therapy services to adults who experience anxiety, depression, mood, and trauma-related disorders. She's currently working at a private practice, intentional healing space in Baltimore, Maryland. So welcome to the show, Jelisa.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Jelisa, what an impressive bio. I'm just impressed. Trust me, our net is not that wide, but we keep really getting great people on the show. So super happy that you're joining us on your weekend. So very impressive bio, but kind of want to jump right in. If maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, your therapy style, counseling style, etc.
Yes, so I consider myself to be a very relatable therapist. So when you come into session with me, you'll feel comfortable and automatically understand that the therapeutic process is a collaborative approach. And so what I do is I try to build a rapport with you initially, try to get to understand how you see the world. Try to understand what it is that's bringing you into the therapy session. And so with me, you'll be able to cry, you'll be able to laugh, you'll be able to feel all the feels and not feel judged for it. So I would say my approach is very collaborative, very understanding and compassionate. I will challenge you if there's some thinking that's happening that may not be beneficial or maybe having some adverse effects to how you want to get better. I'll challenge you on that and also offer compassion to help you see the best version of yourself.
I love that you said collaborative, because I think a lot of the time when I've contemplated in the past going to therapy, or I've talked to other people who possibly need therapy, it's always, I don't want someone to tell me what to do, you know? So I love that you mentioned that it is a collaborative process and, the patient is involved too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll second Cindy. I think you didn't use this word, but what resonated with me through what you were just sharing was safe space, right? I always say that the three people that might know you the best would be like your priest, your mortgage lender, because they go through, like, I'm telling you, they can go through every nook and cranny of your whole life history and the whys of why you did things, and then your counselor. Do you find it difficult to maintain like a composure if someone shares something really something that would take your breath away or make you pause? Do you find that you really have to like compose yourself to hear some of these hard conversations or are things that are difficult in people's lives?
Absolutely. Just want to identify with the human experience. And I am a person first before I'm a therapist. And so when someone is sharing something very touching or very difficult, I feel it, right? And I think one of the things that helps is after a therapeutic session, I debrief with myself. And so I'm making sure that I'm also practicing self-care because it is a lot. I am listening to a lot of different stories. I'm listening to a lot of different feedback. And some of that can be very painful. And I want to make sure that, one, I'm caring for myself so that I can provide the services important to others. And so absolutely, when someone is sharing a story with me, it can be like, wow. But I make sure that I try to hold my composure in a therapeutic session, because for some people, if I'm showing shock on my face, I don't want them to feel like there's some discomfort or there's some type of transference, countertransference, which is always present in the therapeutic relationship.
Wow, very knowledgeable. I think the one thing that I kind of want to start our conversation out with is really, when you talk to the, everyday person, it's like, I'm stressed today, or I'm feeling anxiety, and it's kind of become just like a term where we're throwing around, right? The same way of like, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling angry, because it is an emotion, of course. But at what point, should people start thinking about this being something that you need help with to manage? And if you can tell us a little bit about what stress and anxiety looks like for people to begin to identify.
Absolutely. So from a therapist perspective, when we're looking at folks who are struggling, we're looking at different domains of your life, right? And so I'm looking at, how are you feeling mentally? How are you feeling physically? Right? How are you feeling? Or how are you functioning socially? How are you functioning at work? And so when things become so heavy that your functioning level has changed, meaning you're having a hard time getting out of bed, you're finding it hard to interact with other people, you're starting to see changes in your relationships, right? It's kind of like that steady decline. This is going to indicate to you, okay, I need some support, right? Because we all experience stress. Stress is a natural occurrence, right? We experience good stress and bad stress. Good stress can be change. You get a new job, right? It can be stressful to get that new job and try to transition and figure out new ways of learning, new ways of doing things, right? But it's also a good thing. You are experiencing change and change for the better, right? Then you have stress that could be not so great, right? Maybe you're having interpersonal conflicts at work. Maybe some things going on around you that's been impacting you, right? And so really a key indicator is if I'm not able to function at my normal level, right? I'm noticing that when I used to go out and I don't anymore. I noticed that I used to pick up the phone and call my friends and I don't anymore. I noticed that now I'm crying every day when I get out of bed, or I'm having a hard time getting out of bed, or I'm sleeping a lot, or eating a lot, or not eating enough. So it's really about functioning.
So I want to acknowledge that like stress, sure, is like an outward manifestation of like the things going on in your life, but the things that it does to you internally, to your heart rate, to your inability to sleep, which then compounds multiple problems, to just, an affected immune system, like stress can carry so many different like outward, but also inward. But I was having an interesting relationship. And, when Cindy told me that we had you coming on as a guest, I was really excited, but I really wanted to make it more about what people would get out of this. But I just want to be raw for a moment. So I had a discussion with a friend the other day who said, you need to stop thinking from a place of running, like I'm running away from something that might be a stress, whether it be school or work or, whatever, to a place of I'm moving, I'm growing. I think people have a lot of fear, right? I think people have fear to make change. I had a conversation this morning with a very close friend who said, hey, I'm contemplating making a massive job switch. And she gave me the pros and the cons, and I listened to her and I was like, go for it. Before we hopped on this call, she sent me the message and she said, I'm afraid, but I took the job. And I'm like, all right, go. That's great. That's great. But I think for some, myself guilty, there's a fear of moving, fear of just fear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just kind of piggying back off of you, Melissa, that fear that we all experience, like, I just don't know what's on the other side, right? Whether it's I'm evolving in a good direction, whether it's things are declining, I do not know what's on the other side. And if I do not know what's on the other side, how am I going to be able to navigate this? And a lot of people experience that, right? Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen, right? And naturally, we start to panic, or we start to overthink, right? We start to play out every scenario, or like some people, we avoid, right? So I'm not going to address this. I'm going to leave this to the side, and then it starts to pile up. And so that is also a good indicator. Talk to somebody, right? getting a professional that you can speak to, someone that you can relate to. And if you aren't ready to have that conversation with a professional, reach out to someone that you're close to that you feel comfortable and safe with. Like safe space, as you mentioned earlier, is so important, because you can have a simple conversation with a good friend and notice that you feel a lot relieved.
You know, when you're taking a deep breath and you haven't taken a deep breath in a long time and it kind of hurts your chest a little, but like you feel a little bit better. And I feel like that's how I would describe what you just said, because it can be hard. You know, I think we're all going through a really stressful time. Burnout is not a secret. Everybody is experiencing it. And, you know, people are losing their jobs in the masses. I mean, every day we look at an article, you know, Google let go these many people, Delta let go these many people. And there are these bigger companies that you hear about, but you don't hear about the smaller companies. So it makes it a little uncertain for people. And I think is important to kind of reach out and help to mitigate that stress. I mean, you know, physically, like this pimple on my face, if you're watching on camera, if you're not, I mean, that is a manifestation of stress. Inward and out. No, but thank you for that. And then, and just on, before we move on from this topic, from this question, can you talk a little bit about what anxiety is and, you know, what that means in this context as well?
Absolutely. So anxiety is when there is a ruminating worry, right? And so if you think about anxiety, think about this constant state of being worried about something. And this worry is a perceived or real threat, right? And so you're constantly thinking about, let's say, for instance, you know, something at work. And you're going to work and you're driving to work and you're super anxious. You can feel it in your body, right? Your heart is beating fast. You can't sit still. You're fidgety, right? And it could be just a work presentation that you have to do, right? But there's something about that work presentation that makes you feel uneasy, right? And the uneasiness is what sticks out for anxiety, is that the perceived threat that is happening and your response to it is not proportionate, right? So if you're finding yourself having panic on your way to work because there's a work presentation, you're experiencing some anxiety, right? And so it's looking at the response to what you're experiencing and what you think is coming, and you're constantly worrying or thinking about it over and over and over again. And you start to notice it in your body, you start to notice it in your thoughts, and you start to have a hard time functioning.
So piggybacking off of what Cindy just asked about anxiety and what you shared, give us some real, you know, and seeing that our podcast is kind of themed towards women and in the workplace and so forth, talk to us about some solutions or techniques that people can use, real everyday solutions, techniques that people can actually use, because like Cindy mentioned, the burnout is real. The stress is real.
One thing I tell folks, especially if you experience anxiety at work, is to take breaks. Too often we are so busy and we in this very productive state, what I like to call grind culture. We're at work, we're on it, we're trying to make sure that we get something done, and we do not take a break. And so a 15-minute break can do so much for you. It allows you to calm your body down. It allows you to take a minute. It allows you to step away from whatever you're distracting yourself from or working too much on. So a simple thing that you can do in the workplace is take a 15-minute break, one. Then two, make sure that you eat, right? Make sure that you eat, make sure that you hydrate yourself, make sure that you're taking care of yourself on a day-to-day basis, right? Because if you're not eating, you're not hydrating, then you're not going to function well. Another thing that you can do is some deep breathing. And so a lot of folks who may be experiencing anxiety and it may be manifesting somatically in the body, right? You may find yourself fidgeting a lot. You're kind of just tapping your fingers. You can't keep still, kind of all over the place, right? Taking a minute to just focus on the breath. So some mindfulness techniques. Maybe do some deep breathing, listen to some music, just try to find ways to calm your body down, right? And this will help you calm your emotions and calm your nervous system. So those are some simple things that we can do to kind of care for ourselves to help with any anxiety that might be present.
You know, how should people begin to prepare to leave a job or to decide to stick with that job? You know, we have a point of break, let's call it that, where, you know, this place may be creating a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. How should people approach that decision process around, you know, decisions to leave or stay? And how does one prepare for either to commit to that?
Gotcha. One thing that I can recommend, just not just from a therapeutic perspective, but a personal one. Making a list of pros and cons. What is my reason for staying at this job, and what is my reason for leaving, right? And kind of looking at both. And if my reasons for staying is not in alignment with my values, right? Maybe my reason for staying is because I make a lot of money, right? But the job does not serve a personal purpose, right? It's not in alignment with how I see life or my values. Maybe the company's values are not aligned with your personal values. Then maybe that's something to assess, right? Also, kind of seeing how is the job impacting my stress, right? Is this causing me so much stress that I'm not able to sleep at night, right? Is it causing me so much stress, or do I have good work-life balance, right? And there's been times, you know, for me personally, where work-life balance was not there. I had a caseload of, 30, 40 people, and I'm not managing well, right? And if you are not managing at a level where you feel like you can function or you can be okay, then it's time to consider if this is a good fit for you, and if this is well enough for you to be able to pour into other people or do the work that you are desiring to do.
What do you say if the company's values are in line with your values, right? The work, the practice of the work is in line with what your beliefs are, but it's the people.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's the people. It's the people who, it's the people.
Mm. That's a good question. When we're in a space and we cannot function because of the people that we're around, where the company is well, but the people aren't, then of course you're going to have a lot of questions. Some things that I've recommended to folks, and I've done myself, if I cannot get along with my colleagues or my coworkers or even management, right, I'm going to confront those that I feel like it's not working out. And for some people that can be hard, right? Having a difficult conversation can even cause anxiety, right? Confronting someone where you know that there's conflict can be difficult. However, your personal boundaries are more important, right? And so setting some boundaries around the people that may not be in alignment with you is a good stepping stone to try to build or cultivate a better environment for yourself. And so evaluating your boundaries with the people that you're working with, so that you are able to do your job and feel fulfilled at the workplace.
I think there's a place where it goes beyond one or two, right? Like, let's talk about work culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's more than one, it's culture. And again, I think right now, I guess the reason I want to keep pushing on this is because leaving a job is not easy. And I feel like we've had other episodes where it's like we're kind of providing people with the tools to how to go into another job, how to move, but that relationship break with your employer is not easy. It's a big decision, right? So what would you say when it comes to work culture, and how or in general, when you have a massive community and you are just one, you know, how do you provide counseling or support to people in that situation?
Absolutely. Workplace trauma is real, right? You get in a space and you are isolated. It's just you. You feel like you're the only one there. Maybe you're not feeling heard. And so really kind of doing some, at least for me on a clinical perspective, doing some narrative work. What is keeping you at a place where the culture is not in alignment with you as a person, right? What is holding you there, whether it's holding you hostage or whether you're feeling like I cannot leave this place, right? Because whether it's like being in a relationship and you can recognize the relationship is toxic, right? You can tell that the relationship isn't working, but you want to see it through. You want to see if you come out on the end of this and it works out. And through that process, you're tired. Through that process, you are getting sick or you're not feeling like yourself, right? You start to question yourself and things and people around you. And so really honing in on the fact of, okay, what is keeping you there? What is it about this place that that either for some reason is grounding you, or is this a fear-based response where you are more inclined to stay than more inclined to face the fears of leaving? Because I think what Melissa talked about earlier, talking to that friend who might have been afraid to transition because we don't know what's on the other side, but we know it's here at this place, even if it's toxic, right? And sometimes we got to confront that. Am I getting comfortable with this, even though I know that it's not well for me, and trying to navigate being uncomfortable so that I can be well.
I think for a lot of people who might be listening, you said fear-based. I think for a lot of people who might be listening, it's the real tangibles. It's the, I have to have a roof over my head. It's I'm a single parent. It's the, I'm the only, provider for, my household. It's the food, it's the bills, it's health insurance. It's all those real things that people are afraid to, it's the job market. The job market right now is to me, it's stagnated. I mean, things aren't, moving. And so I think it's just a lot of things, and people just, I guess, put up with the day-to-day stress and bull crap of, of what it is within that culture that Cindy shared. So, absolutely. And you can deal with one bad apple, right? Okay. But when you got a whole bushel of them and they're all making everything rot, it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
I guess, what comes from that is, how do you survive? How would you, we talked about the fear of seeing what's on the other side and making the evaluation of pros and cons. But let's say that's not an option right now, right? Some people, they can't just switch careers. I mean, let's look at the nursing industry or doctors during COVID. Yes, they probably could have been I'm just going to go and do something else. But it was one of those, I can leave this hospital and go to this other hospital who is also overburdened and overrun. And, so I think then that shifts the mentality of how do you provide support to survive?
Absolutely. Going back again to really identifying those boundaries. We don't talk enough about the importance of boundaries and why they exist. And I think that just comes from, growing up, we may not have had boundaries in place. We're always told what to do, right? As kids, you do this and these are the consequences. And if we say no, these are the consequences. And so in adulthood, we're navigating when to say no, when it's appropriate, and also looking at the consequences of that. But it is okay to set boundaries and limitations in the workplace. workplace, right? If you feel like what is going on around you is causing a lot of stress, of causing a lot of trauma, workplace trauma for you, just figuring out what boundaries do I need to make sure that this doesn't consume me while I am navigating it and while I am trying to figure out what's best and working on a transition plan, right? Because if, let's say, for instance, you're going into a workplace environment, maybe there is a company culture where they're not inclusive, right? And you're trying to navigate how you feel isolated or how one feels isolated in the workplace. What boundaries then do you feel like would be appropriate for you to put in place? So one, that you're not feeling too isolated, or one, you're not burning yourself out.
You mentioned workplace trauma. And I think when we think about trauma, we think about these, catastrophic events in our lives, or at least I did, until I knew better. But can employees develop trauma in the workplace, and how does that get developed? Is it a gradual thing that can happen, or is it more that like car crash type of event?
It can be all of the above, right? It can be something that gradually it happens, or that car crash event, right? Trauma, one of the key pieces about trauma is when we experience something that is devastating to us, if we look around the room and there is no one there to offer support during that devastation, right? If there's no one we can confide in, if there's no one we're talking to, even if we're isolating ourselves, right? This can increase the likelihood of you feeling like this event is a traumatic event for you, right? And so when we think about workplace trauma, for folks who experience maybe company culture due to race, gender, right, sexual orientation, and there's isolation, right? And you have no one to lean on, no one to talk to about support, or you don't feel safe enough to have conversations, even if it's with your HR department, right? That can be very isolating, and that can lead to feeling like this is a very traumatizing event for me, right? For a person. And so really what's going to be key factors for you, noticing if every day you go home from work, you're leaving the workplace and you're feeling really, really bad. And then you're noticing that you're not even motivated to go back into work. You start to notice changes in your body in terms of like, even if it's anxiety, even if it's negative thoughts, changes in your productivity at work, right? And so a lot of things can contribute to workplace trauma or cause workplace trauma, and really trying to hone in on getting support. And if you can't get support from people at work, if there's not people that you can trust, leaning on people outside of work, whether it's your friends, family, or a professional who you can process the emotions with to work through it. Because again, trauma, you have to go through a grieving process, right? Just like any traumatic event that may be more devastating or not, you have to grieve it. And a part of grieving is identifying the feelings that don't feel good and exploring it further.
I think that when, you experience that workplace trauma, whether it be that car crash that Cindy referenced, or all the little things that just stack and heap,
Mm-hmm.
and then come the end of the week, you're so mentally burned out, fried, and exhausted. You know that your work product is still there, but at what cost? At the cost of working 10, 11-hour days, at the cost of working weekends, at the cost of just being stressed out because you don't feel like you're supported, or you don't just, it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. But so let's say you don't have anyone to talk to and you want to get plugged into a therapist. What is that short list or that checklist that people should kind of go into with, the mindset like, hey, I need to find a professional? What's that short list that people should have in mind?
Absolutely. So for folks who come into therapy, of course, if this is the first time, you may not know the lingo. When you're going on Psychology Today, you're trying to search Okay, who do I look for? What modalities or what do they use, right? Well, first place you want to start if you're looking at finances is making sure that the person is in network, right? And so making sure that whoever you're searching for takes your insurance if you cannot afford to pay out of pocket, right? The second thing is really asking yourself, what type of person do I typically feel safe with, right? Do I find myself more comfortable talking to men, women? Does it matter? Do I need someone that looks like me? Do I need a person of color? Am I comfortable with people with a certain type of style of therapy? Then you want to look at people's bios and see when you're reading a bio, does that stick with you? Does it talk to you? Does it speak to you personally? Right. And so, of course, you can go on anybody's bio and they're going to use all the clinical lingo in the world when you go on Psychology Today. You're like, what the hell does this mean? I have no idea what they're talking about. Right. And so you want to find someone really that you feel like represents what you're looking for. Right. And so you read that bio and it's like, yes, that's it. That's the one. That's the person I want to talk to. Right. And try to schedule an appointment. And so really trusting your gut, trusting your instinct. And if you get in a space where you meet this person and it doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right, it is okay to look for someone else. And it's okay to tell your therapist, that's not what I'm looking for, right? I've had clients who've told me, hey, you're not the best fit for me. Maybe my counseling approach isn't the right fit, right? And so I provide referrals to them and let them know, hey, if I'm not the best fit for you, I'm also going to provide you referrals because at the end of the day, it's about you getting the care that you deserve and you need.
All right. So I want to ask a follow-up question to this. So I think people, when they think about counseling, they automatically think of like that leather armchair sofa where you lay there and they're like, close your eyes. And the man with the, he's sitting there with his knees crossed. But what does therapy today look like for people typically? Is there the opportunity to do it virtually? What is your office? If you are meeting with folks in person, what is your office like? Is it warm and inviting, or is it, talk to us about that?
Absolutely. So for personally me, I offer telehealth and in-person sessions. And I have a very unconventional style. So you're not going to come in my space and see a leather chair. You may come into space and see a yoga mat, or you may come into space and see a chair, but we may not use it. Right. And so for different therapists, different counselors, they may have couches in their office. They may make the office space feel homey so that you're not walking in and feeling like there's this power dynamic and you're going to a doctor's office. Right. So for different people, it can be different. And if that is important to you, right, it is good to ask those questions and get a consultation done as well. And so telehealth is really popular right now because of course of the pandemic. And since the pandemic, telehealth has been offered a lot more. There's different platforms that are coming out to make telehealth feel more inviting and more comfortable for people. And if you feel like it is a good fit for you, try it. If not, in person is revving back up. So a lot of therapists are now offering in person again. And so going into that counselor's office or that therapist's office and seeing what their style is. Right. If you are a person who likes unconventional types of therapy, you want to look for therapists who might offer different modalities like art therapy, music therapy, different things that they can incorporate outside of just talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the last question, and I want to let Cindy bring us home, is for those who might be listening who might be like, first of all, Listen, I shared before we started the recording, I'm very pro therapy. I've seen a therapist before, and I think they bring tremendous value to anyone who wants to tap into that form of treatment. So very pro therapy. But for those who might be listening who are like, oh my gosh, it brings me anxiety or fear just to know that I'm going to go tell somebody my deepest, darkest secrets. For instance, like if somebody comes in and they're like, I'm about to drop the mother load of like all this stuff on you, and you probably have never heard, all these things. How do you keep that person's privileged information private?
So we have electronic health records that we are required to use by law. We have to enter information into a system that is secured. And so here at our practice, we use Therapy Notes portal, and any information that is shared, it goes into that portal. And so usually when I have sessions, I'm typing up the subjective piece of what clients are telling me, some of the symptoms that they're reporting. And then after the session is over, I complete the notes so that we can, kind of focus on the therapeutic rapport that we're building in session. And so it's just making sure that that information is put into a database, is safe and secured, and people don't have access to it outside of the practice. If there is handwritten notes, we put those notes into the system within 24 hours, and then we shred the documentation. And even the shredder is located in a locked space so that no one can get access to it.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's trustworthy. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's, like Melissa said, there are some things that people have never spoken out loud or have, obviously not told anyone else, right? And so I think there's a lot of trust that is expected as soon as you walk in the door. And that might be hard, but I think that helps to know the information is safe. Like, you're not going to go on TikTok tomorrow and be like, this client I just had yesterday murdered their whole family. Right. That's extreme. But, I think that is helpful to people to know that information is going to be safe. That information is going to be protected. And it's almost like it doesn't go beyond you.
Absolutely. And also when you're looking for a therapist and you find someone you like, ask them, do they offer free consultations? And in the consultation, ask them the questions that you're wondering about. Because what you want to do is, one, you want to make sure that that person is a really good fit. And also you want to ask them about their procedures. Like, how do you protect my information? How do you make sure that, what I tell you is kept safe? And that is a really good question to ask any therapist when you're looking for one.
I told Cindy going into this that I didn't want this podcast to feel like a therapy session for either her or I. And I don't feel that way, but I do feel like, you've equipped us, and I know our listeners, with some like definite tangible things that they can do. I like your pros and cons list. I think that if I would like to believe if I started one that it might surprise me, right? Mm-hmm. It might surprise me what's on that list. So, really appreciative of your time and your expertise and your knowledge sharing. For those who are in the Baltimore area, how are you taking on new clientele? How do people reach out to you?
Absolutely. So you can visit Psychology Today. And when you go on Psychology Today, you can put in my name, Jelisa Glanton. That's spelled Jelisa Glanton. As soon as you list it there, it'll pop up. It'll be Intentional Healing Space. And then you can reach out to me. It'll say send an email or call. And when you reach out to me, I'll respond. If it's way by email, I'll send you a link to schedule your free consultation, which is 15 minutes. If it's by way of call, we'll talk about how we can get the consultation completed. And it takes a few minutes of asking a series of questions, and also offering time for you to ask me whatever it is that is on your mind about therapy, what my style is, what my approach is. I give people free rein to ask whatever they need to make them comfortable about proceeding with therapy services. Okay. And so again, just Psychology Today.
Is licensing in a way that you could take people across the country, or it has to be just those in the state of Maryland?
That's a good question, Sadie. It is only Maryland residents. So I am licensed in the state of Maryland. I cannot see any clients who are in any other state. And so in order for me to provide any services, they have to be, one, a resident of Maryland. And even if they are a resident, let's say they're vacationing in, I don't know, Georgia or Hawaii, and they want to have a session, I can't have that session. They have to be physically in the state in order for me to provide the service.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. So, again, maybe a question that somebody who might be listening might be like, well, I wish they would have asked that. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it. So you want to see Jelisa and you're not in network with the provider or the insurances that she works with. Is it affordable for people who want to pay cash?
Yeah. So we do offer self-pay rates here at Intentional Healing Space. The self-pay rates are really determined by the practice manager. And so usually if a client reaches out to me and they do not have insurance, I reach out to the practice manager and the billing specialist to ask a couple of questions based on contractual agreements with insurances and just to make sure that I'm able to provide the service. And so the rates are pretty affordable. I think it varies based on the last insurance that you've had. And then I also, me personally, if there's a client who's in need, I will offer some pro bono services, maybe 1 or 2 pro bono slots. Just to kind of give back and to make sure that some people can access the care that they really want and really need.
Well, thank you so much, Jelisa, for tuning in with us today. And I mean, I absolutely feel like I have, more evaluating to do but also more relief. And I hope that is what the takeaway is for our listeners today. And also you're not alone. If you're feeling stressed, like, at least 2 of us on this podcast are also stressed. And so many more that are listening. So I'm so happy to have had you on, and I hope that you're open to coming back on. And thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, totally. You are welcome back anytime. Cindy, I think we should put some of the practical advice Jelisa gave us and see what it does to our stress levels.
Absolutely.
My stress level right now feels a lot lower right now. Seriously, I'm a lot calmer. I've been pretty keyed up all week, over like various things, but it's not just work. It could be, here we are, we're going back into it, but it's not just work. It's all the other things that are coupled along. Work is just one hat that you wear, right? So depending upon what you have in your personal life, or maybe you're a student, it could be anything. It could be multiple things that just compound. So thank you for all that you shared. And I'm going to start researching Maryland.
Absolutely. And I just want to add, like, if you are in search of like peace in your life and you're just trying to just find your way and navigate things. Just want to tell all the listeners out there, peace isn't the absence of pain. We're gonna feel pain, and so peace isn't the absence of pain. It's our ability to navigate through it, and so building that ability to navigate through all of the hardships, adversity, and pain that you experience, you can find peace within that. And so I hope that takeaway gives people some hope that there is possibility, even if you're struggling at this time.
Clap. Well, everyone, you heard it here. Thank you so much for everything that you brought to this podcast and this episode. And thank you for pouring into Cindy and I. We appreciate it. So you're welcome back anytime. And until then, everyone listening, drop us comments, what you might want to hear on future episodes. Go ahead and give us a rating if you haven't done so. Check out our website. Cindy, we'll put that in the show notes. And again, until next time, just keep interrupting.